Hey there. After a day of working and hanging out with family and friends, playing games, I was just relaxing here. Kids have gone to bed. Reading my little pocket Constitution, Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and pondering freedom and liberty. Those words are used so much, people are dismissive of them, sort of like a sign that you walk by every day or drive by every day on the road. Pretty soon you just start ignoring it and you don't even recognize it's there. But I was thinking deeply about what freedom and liberty is and our founding fathers. Last September, my family took a 40-state trip in 5 weeks. We bought an old RV, fixed it up, crossed our fingers, loaded up the kids and all our stuff, including mountain bikes, and took off. We had an awesome adventure, but really what made it so special was the history, all the historical sites and the different extremely important and interesting things that occurred on this land. And of course, some tragic and violent, as it is whenever there are peoples fighting over lands and resources and trying to let the strongest prevail. As the saying goes, let the best man win. Groups of people have done that forever, and that has happened a lot on this American continent, north and south, between countries from all over the world. And the populations of people who already lived here, the grand battle that it was over a several 100-year period to finally come up with this American empire. So it was not a clean and nice thing. It was a juggernaut on the move. But the principles it was founded on were, for their time, enlightening and radical, and ushered in a totally new era of human governance. You have to think about some of the concepts that were written into the framework of the Constitution. And the framework of the Constitution was like how the government's going to work and function, the nuts and bolts and the organization, and how it's going to represent the people. And then along came Thomas Jefferson in particular, and several others, realized, no, wait. Humanity has always had to fight very hard just to maintain some very basic freedoms. And there's always somebody or some force or some entity that wants to take away or suppress certain freedoms of other people constantly, over and over again. Our founders were very educated people and they understood history. And they said, when we build this thing, let's try to protect certain things that have always been hard for people to keep. And that's where we get the amendments to protect our personal freedoms. And they were basically saying, this government is not giving you these freedoms. Your creator gave you these freedoms, and therefore the government has no right to take them away. Popular opinion has no right to take them away. They are yours. Hold them sacred. And I know people ask, well, there's all over the world, and I've traveled the world. I lived in China. I worked for the Chinese government, communist government, teaching. And I've been in many different countries, and yes, people are living good lives in a lot of different countries. However, when push comes to shove, even in Western countries, you see freedoms falling like dominoes. If you live in England and you tweet or make a Facebook post that says something to the effect of, you believe a man can never become a woman, even if they present that way. There are government officials combing social media for statements like that, and they will literally show up at your door to investigate that, if you are, to see if you are a threat to the peace, for your opinion, for your thoughts and your feelings. In a Western country, in Canada, because of COVID, there are Canadian police that have surrounded churches to keep people from going in and worshiping. Is the American Constitution exceptional? Yes. Yes, because even when terrible things have happened here over history, including my ancestors on one side of the family, who belonged to a very unpopular religion, and they were not allowed the freedom of religion, and of course slavery, and the rights of many different minorities that have come in of all skin colors, including Italians when they first came in, Jews, Scottish, all sorts of people. Whoever the new people are, they tend to not be treated as well. They got to fight for their place and their foothold in society. That's the way it works. It's not just about whiteness trying to dominate everybody else. It's just new people trying to make a foothold in a new culture, and the people who are different. And so even though here everybody, so many different people have seen their freedoms trounced on, there is a backstop where the long arc of progress and the long arc of justice, as Martin Luther King put it, will eventually bend in the favor of those rights that were outlined in our Constitution, because they are there, and it is the backstop by which our legal system is set up to defend. Even though humanity is not perfect and different groups have been absolutely treated horribly, in the end, the arc bends to justice. Thank you, God, for the American Constitution, where if somebody tries to come to my house and arrest me for my opinions on social media, I will sue them and most likely win, unless our legal system has been completely corrupted by so-called social justice ideologues who care more about their thoughts and ideas than they do blind justice and rights that should not be touched, no matter how much you don't like someone else's thoughts or opinions. You just have to live with them, because that's their right and their freedom. And there is a totalitarian tendency in so many people to want to shut others down, and that's happened throughout time in so many different ways, throughout history, around the world, and here, and we're seeing it crop up again. And it's cloaked in this thing called social justice and anti-racism, which is actually not anti-racism. It's just a new racism, because it's advocating for things that are actually quite racist when you examine it thoroughly. But a lot of people, because they don't examine it, or they're looking to their emotions first rather than logical mind, good people fall for this stuff because they want to do good and they want to feel good and they want to look good socially and be acceptable socially. And so a lot of these bad ideas can spread like wildfire. But we have a backstop, and it's called the Constitution and our rights. that were not given us to the government, and therefore they don't have the right to take them away. And every human being living in the United States who's a citizen of it should be grateful for that. And anybody else around the world should be aspiring to that. So I've just been thinking about the Constitution. I'm a student of history, and I understand very well the issues and the problems and the stuff we face today. A huge problem that we face today are the tyrannical actions of large companies. These companies, these large companies that are influencing our government to bend them, to bend our representatives, our elected representatives, to do things and create laws that favor them and to help beat their competition. For example, Amazon coming out and saying they're in favor of certain taxes because they feel like the money will be used to help people, the downtrodden. Well, how nice. How nice that they would come out and say that. When the actual motivation, the most important one, is that they know because they are so powerful, those taxes won't hurt them. Amazon will be okay, but their competitors won't. And so you see these large corporations supporting things that on its face you think, why would they support that? Wouldn't that hurt them? And then you find out through research and study, oh, they're supporting that because it's going to help them stay in the pole position and crush the competition. That is not capitalism. It's crapitalism. It's corruption. And so we have a major tyrant on our hands right now in large corporations that are more than willing to throw our country under the bus and throw our culture under the bus to maintain their profitability. When you have companies that are so worried about how China feels because China has their financial tentacles all over these companies, that China is allowed to get away with major human rights abuses, and you have companies quaking in their boots and not saying a word about the Chinese human rights abuses, but then the companies come out and boycott states like Georgia, who passed a law to firm up their voting rights, the voting right voting processes and all of that to try to reduce fraud. And I'm not saying I necessarily support everything that was done with that, and that's a whole different other commentary, but you have companies boycotting the state of Georgia because they passed a law as an attempt to reduce fraud, but yet those same companies won't boycott China for all the horrible stuff they were doing. And why? Because China holds the purse strings. So it's money over morality. So they're phonies when they come out with these big, wonderful proclamations and social justice efforts and things that they're doing. They're phonies. They do what it takes so that they can stay in the pole position and not be targeted by those that are in power. Their tune will change when there's a Republican president back in, because they know that all their boycotting and this and that for woke social justice reasons is not going to be looked upon as fondly by a Republican or conservative administration, and so they will act differently. That's a real problem when you have very large and very powerful companies that make their decisions based on their profitability and not the best interest of the country, the culture, or the citizens. And they keep their finger in the wind. That's a real problem. When we can't trust our elected leaders to make good decisions because they're owned by these companies, that's a real problem. So yeah, we got problems. And I'm rambling on about some of the stuff on my mind. We got real problems, but there is a backstop and there is a legal system. And the problem is not the citizens and their relationships. The powers that be, the media industry, the duopoly, the two political parties that run the show, Republicans and Democrats, they thrive on and they raise funds on division and fear. Instead of coming up with an enemy that we could all rally around together as Americans, they pit Americans against Americans. Blacks against whites, whites against anybody who has darker skin. Fear, fear, fear everywhere. That your neighbor is a threat to you because they're going to take something away. They're going to do this or that. White supremacy is everywhere. Just constant drumbeat of division and casting fear. And you see this out of every president that has come in, even ones that I have liked or voted for. They play that game because that's the game, the big game in town. Anyway, so we got issues, but by God, I am so grateful to be an American and to be able to use this as a backstop. And I just pray that we all understand this and do everything we can to uphold it. And remember that these rights are not given to us by government. So it's not their right to touch them. Have a good night.